show. We are happy to have you after, unfortunately, another Bears loss, 30-12 to Minnesota. Maybe I'm crazy, but this one actually felt a little closer than that. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the Bears actually tried to string some drives together. But unfortunately, it's now reached a record of 4-9 on the season as this losing streak continues, with really 4-10 on the season as this losing streak continues with no end in sight. They started the season at 4-2. We are now at 4-10. That means it's been 8 straight losses. So on that chipper note, I would like to introduce Patrick Mannelly, who I helped watch the game with in our studio, and Olin Kreutz. And guys, I'm pretty sure we were all pretty close on the score predictions as well. Refresh my memory, Olin, on what you had in the pregame show.
Yeah, I had 30-12, just kind of what you expected, that the Vikings would overwhelm the Chicago Bears. And they just, at this point of the year, Pat and Leila, what you are is what you are, right? Like, you're going to make the same mistakes. You're going to crumble at the goal line. Someone's not going to report. You're going to get stopped on 4th and 1. You guys are going to make mistakes on blocks. And, we could pick it apart and go through every little mistake, Pat. But when you watch this team, it's just over and over and over again. They show you their identity. They're probably trying to get Coach Eberflus back to the building. Maybe they can fire him again.
Yeah, Olin, it's just uninspiring, man. Like you said, you keep seeing the same mistakes, but then there's also something that shows up, and it's extremely embarrassing. The fact that Kramer didn't report. I mean, that's something, you go through short yardage and goal line on Fridays, and you almost make a joke of it, of the guy who's reporting, that he just turns to one of the coaches and always rubs his jersey, says, hey, 68 reporting, and just to forget that. And that's the only thing he had to do, and that to me just kind of sums up this team when they talk about details and accountability and all that kind of stuff, and something that little can be that big in the game. The second series of the half, I think the defense came out and had 2 3-and-outs, and then so you're like, hey, maybe something can happen here. Maybe they can make it a game in the fourth quarter, and you take 7 off the board and you only get 3. And it amazes me, guys, that there is always something to talk about that happens like that. And I'm like, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And there it is. But it's uninspiring, and it's just brutal. Olin, you and I were texting each other. I might have had some cuss words in our text back and forth, but it's not fun, and it can't be fun for them either. But they keep saying the same thing. We need to be more accountable. We need to take care of the details. Well, you're not, and it's showing it. In that loss in 30-12 to the Vikings.
Yeah, and it shows up. Tyreek Stevenson in cover 3, the same guy again that last week was peeking in the backfield on that first touchdown, right? So just like we're talking about, the things are repeating itself, and then now it's the same players also making mistakes over and over again. They keep talking to us about their details and how they have to be more accountable. And we were talking about the 4th and 1, and yeah, Cole Kmet, I don't like the toss behind the left tackle, the young left tackle Karan Amagaji, who struggled tonight, which you thought he would, right? You thought he would, going against a very good pass rusher and Jonathan Grenard for the Minnesota Vikings, and it left them one-on-one too many times for my liking. I don't think you're going to go for it on 4th and 1 early in the game, and you're going to toss it behind your young left tackle and Cole Kmet, who got stuffed right there at the point of attack, right? And then, the next 4th and run, they're running power. And Pat and Leila, if you put another tight end in there, the gap, it's one gap wider now, right? If you're not running with a fullback. And I go back to the fullback again. And we kept asking, why don't you just keep Blossing game if you want to use a fullback, right? Then you don't have to get a center to report, right? And then you can put a guy in the backfield for power. It's just really, really a frustrating team to watch this year. I don't even know, guys, honestly, where to put the blame anymore. Like, it's just all of them.
Well, I would say what you mentioned there, that's coaching, right? I mean, you're sitting there and saying, okay, our first 4th and 1 call, and guys, and they probably did talk about it, we're going to go for it early. We're going to put the pressure on them, see if we can get this thing going. And that's what you came up with when you're sitting in meetings. I know you maybe didn't know during the week that Karano Magaji was going to be in there until, Friday or Saturday or later in the week. Yeah, but still, once he's put in there and you understand that should be a big Sharpie across that, right? You take that play and say, no, let's go, at least go to the right. That to me is on coaching. And then, and then the other 4th and 1, when a guard pulls, can you just go blow somebody up, not dance around, when you're coming around the center? That just I didn't like that either. And then obviously I think Swift, he tried to hit the old backside A gap like Thomas Jones, Olin.
Yeah, it's when you line up an extra tight end there instead of using a fullback,
Yep.
you basically made the right guard the center.
Yeah.
Right. So now the A gap is outside, actually the B gap, and I don't want to go through. You can't really explain it on radio, but it's just frustrating again to watch. And Karan's got to cut that guy there.
Yeah.
You can't try to cut him off with crowd noise on the road, and he'll learn that, right? I mean, what you're hoping that a good thing comes out of this is that he has tons of film now against a top level pass rusher on the road with crowd noise, right? So I don't know what really to take out of this game. And then the defense again, the coverage, the lack of pass rush, sitting in zone early in the game. It's just all like you're watching a rerun of every game.
Yeah, and we're seeing. Oh, sorry, Leila, but you're seeing also. Let's go to Caleb. Caleb looked inconsistent. I thought he was very inconsistent. Missed some easy throws. Missed that touchdown throw to Keenan on the left sideline. He looks scared in that pocket running around. I want to see growth, and I don't think we're seeing the growth we were hoping to see. And I'm concerned about this inconsistent with his passing, and he just doesn't seem accurate right now. So there's a lot of things that we were hoping for later in the year when they got to go against these division games in these division games, that you would see that growth. And we say, hey man, we checked the box here. He's getting better there. He's getting better there. I just see him kind of staying the same, and just maybe saying he's regressing a little bit with his accuracy.
I mean, that's something that I did want to point out, and I'm so lucky that we have you two to talk about this, Olin and Pat. And I joked with James Williams and previous analysts we've had on the score. Of course, we almost have enough for an offensive line. Almost. I'll give you what I can. I got a chop block to give her to. But there was so much today where you could illustrate. Not only was it a line flaw. We've talked about placing the blame on the line when it is due. And you see that happening. But there's multiple issues happening in this game. It's a multi-system organ failure in a way. Which organ is failing the most and the quickest? This is a triage now when it comes to using terms like that versus this game. And to me, guys, there's a couple of situations that happen. Number one, we talk about not letting one loss beat you twice. I hate that the Hail Mary was the turning point in the season. Like, this is a movie. This is real life. And one loss shouldn't beat you twice, and now it's beaten the Bears how many times? We're talking about an 8-game losing streak here. And even in this game, you saw how one mistake led to another, killed a drive. The sack led to a bad check down where maybe Caleb Williams is concerned on early drives in the game, right? Check down to a short run. Then we see the sack fumble happen on the third play. So the sack leads to a conservative play where maybe you're not trusting yourself. Then you see the sack fumble and the turnover. Or we're seeing what happened with Doug Kramer. He failed to report. I've never heard such a condescending tone out of an official. Like, we all just failed our test for using ink and not number 2 pencil on the Scantron, So that happens. And then what should have been a touchdown gets called back, and that turns into just a field goal. At least in this case, guys, if you're going to start holding people accountable and taking out variables in a harsh way when you fire Shane Waldron, when you fire Matt Eberflus, we start to figure out who's actually responsible here. And a lot of the blame has to go to the players, too. One bright spot I can say is at least the defense was not picked apart like it was against San Francisco the week before. It's still 30-12. Let's not get that twisted. But at least we didn't see 2 explosive plays on the first drive like we did the week before. There weren't as many breakdowns.
To me, just what it was, guys, is just they're a much better football team. And that's what makes me upset, that it turned into a 30-12 game. And yes, it was a little bit closer, and you could hear Troy Aikman saying, hopefully it's going to turn into a better game. But we all know that. We all felt that. It's just they are a much better team, and it's unfortunate going into the season that we were supposed to be better than them. And then they're probably going to maybe win the division now with the injuries in Detroit. And it's just to sit there and watch that and think about all the positive vibes or positive feelings we had about this team and what the potential could be and where we were going to be maybe, talking about the playoffs, what these games are going to mean late at the year. And now we're just sitting there watching the Minnesota Vikings kick our butt. And you just like, God, why can't we be them? And we're not even close. And it's like, what do we have to do this offseason to be competitive? We're just not a competitive football team anymore, and that's what's so disappointing about this season to me.
You can't lose your head coach and your offensive coordinator and expect everyone to keep developing, right? And that's why I was fascinated by everyone talking about this intern head coach bump that they were supposed to get, right? And I just didn't see it coming from, when you lose your OC, you lose your head coach, and they're both your play callers, right? And you were talking about the thing you're probably worried about the most, if you're worried about the Chicago Bears' future, is the way Caleb Williams is starting to look. But if you're really looking at it, Pat and Leila, from the outside looking in, how is he supposed to develop amongst all this chaos, right? And if you look at the Chicago Bears, here's my problem. It's what you both are saying right now. I can't pinpoint the problem. Right? I can't just tell you this is the problem with this team. We shouldn't be in year 3 of the Ryan Poles era and saying there is this problem and this problem, and okay, that's a problem, but this is a problem too, and that's also a problem. Right? So that's where it's really starting to worry me now when you're watching this football team play ball, and I'm saying, well, that guy made a great play there. His last name, I got to go through my flip card and say his name is Ford, right?
Yep.
Jonathan Ford played a decent game and knows against Bradbury, but is Jonathan Ford going to be here next year? Where's Pickens, right? Where's Javon Dexter?
Right.
Where's the guys we've drafted to develop to get our football team over the hump? And that's my problem when I watch this game. Guys, it's the second time Bajan came in to take snaps.
Yeah.
Not because you blew somebody out, because you got blown out.
Yeah, that's an embarrassing thing for the team. And going into the season, everybody questioned, I think the number one question, maybe the biggest question, and being much higher of a question than anything else, was how's the O-line going to play? Well, right now, we know that didn't work out, right? Well, now we're asking about the D-line. The middle linebacker's not playing for what you're paying him for. Tyreek Stevenson is not playing as well as you thought he would. What's going to happen with Jaquan Brisker? Like, now you have even more questions that are at the same level as of what we were asking about the offensive line. So you were hoping to figure this thing out and say, okay, we'll get through the year, then we'll fix the one problem we have, which is the O-line. But now you have 3, 4, 5 problems you have to deal with, and I feel like we're back to ground zero again.
Well, and let's not forget, Javon Dexter is injured. Are you really confident about him being the fulcrum to your defensive front that you say is so important for this team? Is that now going to still continue now that you need a new head coach? Are you going to bring in an offensive head coach? We heard some reports on the pregame show on TV talking about that, but I don't have the confidence that that's necessarily going to happen. How telling, guys, were the shots of George McCaskey and Ryan Poles upstairs watching this game. Meanwhile, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who was also available the same offseason that Ryan Poles was, sitting pretty knowing that he's made the smart decisions, hiring a head coach who knows how to make an offensive talent not only work well, but reclaim him, change the opinion on him maybe in the league. And he's the favorite for Coach of the Year right now, Kevin O'Connell.
It's been an embarrassment of hiring. I mean, it's been that way for 12 years. And we've talked about since George took over. It's been an embarrassment with, you start with just drawing a blank on his the first GM right after. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? No. Phil Emery. Yes, thank you, Phil Emery. Thinking about him and then him bringing in Mark Trestman, and it just keeps continuing that way for 12 years that they don't make the right hires. Who's making those decisions? We know who is, but now we have Kevin Warren in there. And hopefully he can be a different voice, a different set of eyes to figure out who the right person is to bring in. But that's just me crossing my fingers, right? We don't know that. We still know who's in charge. We still know who are sitting in those interviews and making the decision of who they feel like will fit into Hallis Hall. So I don't trust it, but I guess I'm hopeful, just fingers crossed for Kevin Warren, that he is the right guy in there to help figure this thing out.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason again, right, Pat?
Yep.
We joked in the pregame show that me and you are not the pre and post game for games. We're the pre and post for different regimes that come to Hallis Hall. That's what we do nowadays. We have to, you can't even talk about the game and someone's pass set or the play that was called or the scheme that was run or what is going on. You have to keep talking about the plan, right? The actual plan, when you watch them put this team together, and then I'm always surprised, guys, when we get to the end of the year and everyone's surprised that you're not a better running team. And I'm saying, well, did you see who they signed in the offseason, right? Did you see them sign and draft a bunch of wide receivers? Did you see them sign a running back who's not a downhill runner per se, although he was running with attitude tonight? I'll give Swift that, right? He was running downhill, he was running guys over, he had a great chip block, but consistency, right? You need that consistently every week, week in and week out, to bring that kind of attitude to your football team. And now, you lose Braxton Jones and you have a third string, your left tackle from Yale come in, right? And he may develop into a good player. And I don't want to be too hard on a guy who was told he was going to start Friday or Saturday. And to the fact of, I don't know why people are shocked they're not running the ball. That's not the way they're built.
Right.
They took a quarterback number one who basically threw the ball all through college, right? And then they signed a receiver for $20 million, gave another receiver $27 million, and then drafted a receiver number 9 in the draft, signed a running back for $10 million, signed a tight end, and now everyone screams at you, why can't you run the ball? Guys, the plan is the plan, and you have to stick to it. And they are stuck with the way they put this team together, and like you're seeing, it's not working.
Yeah, what did Mully say? He called it they're building the 7-on-7 team before they've built the team. And I got a lot of flack, guys, for just simply asking the question. And what we knew was an outrageously rich free draft class when it came to offensive tackles. We knew that was an excellent class, especially if you were in a top 10 situation like the Bears were.
Yeah.
Did they do the right thing? Did they do Rome Odunze is going to be there. There's no doubt. I like him.
Sure.
But you had to make some tough decisions. You also decided to trade for Keenan Allen. Was a rookie quarterback realistically going to be able to know what to do with all of those weapons when the line was deficient and we saw that coming?
I mean, that's another knock on Ryan Poles, in my opinion, that, we celebrated how he was building the Bears with some of these names, but was he doing it the right way? If you're talking about not drafting an O-lineman, not signing in an O-lineman instead of Keenan Allen, not bringing in a big free agent or anything like that, and we're seeing it right now. It's that might be the big key to make Caleb uncomfortable, and that could be hurting his development. You thought you'd get him weapons on the outside, but I mean, Harbaugh talked about it, right? Jim Harbaugh said as soon as he got there, how am I going to fix it? Give him a running game. How am I going to make Herbert better? Give him a running game. And we're seeing it play out, and it's working for him. And it's just, maybe this is another knock the way we need to evaluate Ryan Poles.
Guys, this is going to date us all. But who was a good quarterback who benefited from having a solid running game? John Elway.
Yes.
In the second part of his career.
Yep.
The more successful part.
Yeah.
I mean, how far do you have to go back to show that a running game helps every single quarterback under the sun? Troy Aikman's talking about it on the game broadcast tonight. He's talking about Norv Turner. Norv Turner and the Cowboys also had one of the best offensive lines of all time and one of the greatest running backs of all time, and a very good fullback, I might add, who's also in the Hall of Fame. Right?
Yep.
Yes, those are all good points, right? And when you talk about all of that comes full circle to, you mentioned Norv Turner, right? And Luke Getsy is fired, right? Waldron is fired, and you go back to the plan of watching this team now, and it's frustrating to see that, okay, Olu Fashanu is there, and he plays for the Jets now, and he's a tackle from the Penn State. And yes, we all thought Rome Odunze went to University of Washington. I'm from University of Washington. Rome Odunze is a great football player, right? But if you're the Chicago Bears and you look at your history and you say, okay, well, what do we have to fix? What is our biggest problem? What has been our problem for years? And we've been through this many times, right? I mean, they took Jaquan Brisker, right, and Cam Jurgens. The Eagles starting center was on the board. Right after Jaquan Brisker, he goes to the Eagles, right? And Brisker, we all hope he gets healthy, but he's out, right? And he's not playing right now. And then they take Tyreek Stevenson the next year, and John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota, the number one center in the draft, is on the board. He's playing center for the Giants, right? So it's just when they took Velus Jones, their starting right tackle for the Seahawks, was on the board right after Velus Jones. It's just you chose not to fix that unit.
Yep.
And now you're suffering for it.
Your reaction at CHGO was great.
Right. I said then it's because Pat and Leila, you're watching a car crash.
Right.
Right. You're watching something like it's you're careening to the cliff, and you're like, guys, you're gonna fall off this cliff. Like, do you not see that? Mm-hmm. The two former offensive linemen. Do you guys not see what's about to happen here? And sure enough, now you're struggling there. And like I said, man, I mean, Karan was out. Remember, he was out all of camp. Right.
Yes.
He was injured, so he had no reps. His pass set looks like he hasn't got much reps.
That was terrible
set,
too,
right?
man.
So, but it's bigger than that, right? There's also 30 points on the board, right? There's also receivers dropping balls. There's too many. Troy Aikman talked about too many receivers in the same spot.
Yes.
Receivers wide open. We're not throwing it to them. We're not getting any big runs out of the running game. They got DJ Moore playing running back out of a 4 wide receiver set to change it up. The defensive line got not enough pressure on Sam Darnold. It's just all right now, guys, man. My biggest problem is that everything's a problem.
Yeah.